I have done a surprising work lately. I'm a bit tired from it. I don't know if you know any of Marie Corelli's books, but her book, The Life Everlasting, it's a beautiful book that just misses it by a lot, not just a little bit. She will say 50 times what could easily be said once. And so I just decided this book needs to be rewritten. So I've rewritten it. And I think you'll like it. Anyway, these are a few quotes from the book in my rewrite, not in hers. It's extensively rewritten. To love God truly, thou shalt have to love him even in those who persecute thee. Repeat nothing, repel nothing, embrace all in God. Few people choose God once they realize what mighty tests he showers on the devotee. Tests which those who are true welcome like rose petals, but which in those in whom the seeds of worldliness still lurk, consider cloudbursts, and eschew as signs that God is unreasonable. You have nothing for which to thank anyone, and nothing for which to blame anyone. The shaping of your destiny lies wholly with you. Let me add this brief word of encouragement, however. Every step you take toward God will mean 2 steps taken by him to receive you. Go, may you conquer the enemy. He relinquished my hands and sat back gazing at me. The enemy, I repeated wonderingly. The universal enemy, Satan, the power of delusion of Maya. The universal enemy, Satan. For delusion is a conscious power. Satan is that power which was needed to manifest creation. And just one thing at the end, I'm not going to read all of them, although they're all good. The chief point in my instruction was the test of the brain and soul against outer influences, the opposing influences of others, which is truly the chief hindrance to spiritual progress. The cowardly fear born in us by the timid. Generally, it is the dread of what other people will say or what other people will think that holds one back from noble action. It should be thoroughly understood that in the eternal advancement of one's own soul, other people and their influences are impediments to progress. In truth, it matters not a jot what anybody says or thinks. All that matters is the altar of one's own spirituality, that it be clear and clean, and that the dual flames of life and love burn steadfast. All opinion, all criticism before these truths becomes absurd and absolutely worthless. So these are a few points. I think you'll like this book. I hope you get to read it. Anyway, many years ago, I went to Brigu Sangita. This was back in 1959, 60, 59, I think. Yes, 59. A little before most of you were born. And it told me, it was amazing to me. Here, somebody, I mean, you can understand a psychic reading your palm or looking at your aura, whatever it is, and saying certain things about you. But somebody wrote about you before you were even born. It makes you wonder. And the things he said were accurate, too. He told me, for example, but many things. He said, you have brothers, but no living sister is possible, although one will die in the mother's womb. When I got back to America, I asked is, what does it say about free will? You don't have free will. You think that you're free to have coffee in the morning. What makes you want to have coffee in the morning? That's the trick. You can do what you want, but what makes you want it? No, you're not free. There's only freedom that you have is to turn toward God or away from Him. If you turn toward Him, He sends you more and more influence to draw you toward Him. If you turn away from Him, Satan, Maya, sends more and more influence to draw you that way. When one of the monks took brahmacharya from Yogananda, Yogananda said, "On your head be it, but if you break this vow, all the forces will be on you." I contacted him many years later, and he has had a perfectly good life. He's very happy with his wife and children and job. That's the force of the forces. He didn't mean a cloud would come upon you and destroy you. He meant that Maya would suck you into thinking this is what's normal and right. And the more you live in the world, the more it seems perfectly right. But what is perfectly right? To find God. There's no other solution to the sufferings of this world. And people say, suffering? I'm not suffering. No, you're not. That's what makes it good. That's what makes life seem attractive. But then suffering comes, and then you wonder if you ever knew happiness. It comes to everybody, and in one way or another, it will have to come to you. The only way out is to find God. It's absolutely the only way. All the scriptures have said this. And yet Maya tugs on you and says, it's not so bad. And it's nice to have a wife and children. And wouldn't it be fun to hear the patter of little feet in the living room and all that? There is no solution except God. The more you turn toward Him, because it seems like an impossible task, but the more you turn toward Him, the more you find Him pulling you. And that pull finally is your salvation. You couldn't do it, but He does it for you when you want Him. So now let me have you ask questions. Do you want to ask any questions? Yes.
I come from a family of sports people, and in sports we always tell them to develop the killer instinct. We are always teaching them to beat the other person, that you have to be better than your opponent. And how does spirituality and this, how do we connect? Where is the link between these two?
Mind you, I'm deaf as a post, so tell me what she said.
She said they come from a family of sports persons, and in sports they've been taught to always be competitive, be the best, and always try to killer instincts. But how can they get spirituality? How can they have spirituality weave into that?
When I was a boy in England, I was on the rugby team. And afterwards we would sit together and have lunch, and there was no thought of animosity. And in America, you couldn't dream of doing that. They'd be fighting at the table. That's a sad thing about America. But the truth is you can have fun and yet not have any animosity. It's the feeling behind it that's wrong. Otherwise, Yogananda used to play tennis. In fact, people used to tell me, I never saw him play tennis because he was too old when I came to him, but they said that wherever the ball was, there he was, and I suspected he materialized himself there. Anyway, sports are a good thing. You need to try your will against opposition, but there must not be, that's the meaning of ahimsa, there must not be a feeling of animosity. I remember there was a girl in college. She went to Bryn Mawr, I went to Haverford, and she was the friend of a girl I used to date. And she was probably the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. I know her name, it doesn't come to mind right now, but she was from India. And she used to always talk about sports and her brothers shooting and hunting and so on. I realized we were about 100 years different in age, even though we were both 18. It really depends on where you are, not or who you are. Anyway, any other questions? That's a very nice thing you're wearing there. You
No.
you don't. Any other? Nobody has any questions at all.
Gopala Swami.
If you have to choose a technique of our path, which one would save?
If you have to choose a technique from our path, which one would it be?
Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga is the most central of them, but all of them are important. I had a question in Chennai. Somebody said, I prefer using the mantra Soham. Well, if you say Soham, then the hum means I, and the emphasis is on you. And I remember Swami Muktananda used to try to tell me that my Guru's mantra Hong So was wrong, but he was wrong, and he had a lot of ego, and I just didn't like to be around him. But I met a Narayan Swami in Delhi, and I asked him, because this guy was saying very strongly, Soham it must be. And I had no Sanskrit, I didn't know enough to argue. So he said, no, Hong Shou is right. There's even a Hong Shou Upanishad. But if you think of it that way, that you're thinking, I am thou, then this is right. If you think you're I, you can say that after you realized him. But when your reality is the ego, then Soham is wrong, because it brings the energy back to the ego. So one thing I have learned over my years is don't listen to every saint. You have your own path and stick to that. It's very good to be loyal. There was one time I met a saint in Howrah, and he was a disciple of Lahiri Mahashaya. And he insisted I was doing Kriya wrong, and he taught me in the right way. Do you know, for 6 months I felt no attunement with my Guru, until finally I rejected that and went back to my Guru. Of course, I had never really rejected him, but in this one respect, then I felt attuned to him again. So it's very important to follow your Guru and don't listen to other ways. Any other questions?
What is the difference between love and attachment? What is the difference between love and attachment?
Between love and attachment, there is no attachment in love. Love, if it's selfish, is for yourself. That's not love, that's attachment. Love is giving of yourself. Love is thinking of what can I do more for you, not what am I getting back for it. So true love means it's unconditional. When the person you love even turns against you and you still love him, that's more like love. You understand? Attachment, love is attachment in a human way, and it's selfish, and that's not love. Now, Narayani, you told me people had lots of questions to ask.
Robi Swami.
Where?
What about self-effort? How hard should we push ourselves to...
As hard as you can. You know, but I asked Pastor once, I keep trying and I'm not getting what I want. Aren't I trying hard enough? He said, you're trying too hard. It becomes tension. So we should try with all our hearts, with all our strength, but still we should have that relaxation that comes with, he said, in meditation as well as in outward action, nishkam karma is important. We should act without desire for the fruits of that action. So if you meditate to please God, not to please yourself, not to think, what am I getting out of it? Just to say, God, whenever you want to come, I'll accept that. Even if you don't give yourself to me in this life. There was a story of Swami Sri Chaitanya a chief disciple of his who was very dear to him, was not in the room when several disciples were asking, when will I find God? And he'd say, well, it'll take you 2 more lives or 3 more lives, or 1 or 2, he said, this life. And then this disciple who was close to him came into the room, and he also asked, when will I find God? It'll take you another 1,000,000 lifetimes. And they felt so badly for him, and they kept asking him. They saw this disciple outside dancing in ecstasy, and they said, didn't you hear him? He said, yes, my brothers rejoice with me. Didn't you hear him say, I would find God? What does it matter when? So that is then Chaitanya called him in and touched him and gave him the experience of God right then. He said, I just said that to show you the attitude it takes to be a true lover of God. You must not have this thought that I need you. I give myself to you, but with that, give as much energy to him as you can. You can't give more, so don't try to give more. Give what you can. And that means don't waste time watching television, for example. How much time do people waste watching television? And the garbage that is thrown into their minds with that television. I never watch it, but I was in a barber shop in Rome many years ago, and he had the TV on. I noticed that the scene changed every 2 seconds. Now, I say that with astonishment, but you probably know that, yes, that's normal. Well, what do you think that does to your mind? It makes you so restless you couldn't possibly find God. Master said television is really an instrument of Satan. It's an instrument of Maya. It gets people hooked, and you can't begin to meditate if you have that. So get rid of you can gain a reputation for extreme generosity by giving it away. Or you can use it, but it's just for movies sometimes if you want to see a movie. That's not so bad. At least there's a time period. At least it keeps going, and no movie will change scenes every 2 seconds. So, but the main thing is give the results of what you do to God. I know Master told me that in my life I would have intense activity and meditation. And I had wanted to be a hermit. I had really planned before I met Master to go to Brazil and live in a forest, the jungle there, and find God. And here he had me lecturing and writing and organizing and doing so many things. And yet, yes, there were years when I thought, can't I just have my life more for myself? But no, I have found that in living for others and doing all this work, that I have gained more than I would ever have gained the other way. Whatever God gives you to do that willingly. Any other questions? I didn't let you sing. I will let you sing afterwards.
There's one question left.
Swamiji, you edited many of Master's books, including Whispers from Eternity. What about the autobiography for yogi? Because my son just finished, he's 11 years old, he just finished reading autobiography as well as the new path. And he said he found the new path much enjoyable and because it was easier to read. So,
What is he saying?
He's saying, Swami, you've edited many of Master's books, and his son, who's 11 years old, just recently read the autobiography and the new path. And he said the new path is much more enjoyable and easy to read. So have you ever thought of editing the autobiography?
The autobiography has been well edited. There are some places where it could use it, but really it's a great book. I think he enjoyed it because it's about a person, about my search, and he could relate to it more. But the autobiography is a much greater book. It tells so many, it inspires you to see that all these people have reached that. With my book, the inspiration comes from somebody seeking truth all his life and finally realizing that you can find God. But there's a lot more to it than that. So I appreciate his opinion, I don't share it. Any other questions?
There's a gentleman over here who had one.
Where?
Straight.
Okay.
But two questions. One thing is, why everywhere in every sect and in every community, why it is so that God needs to be pleased? Why it is so?
Why is it said that God needs to be pleased?
You don't please God. You please yourself.
Everybody does so.
No, when you this is a complete misunderstanding. You don't do things to please God in that sense. You do things to get in tune with His bliss. His nature is bliss, and the more you open yourself to that bliss, and the more you do things that put you in tune with it, the more you feel bliss, and that bliss is His pleasure. But God isn't, hey, did a good thing there. He's not like that at all. And let me tell you also that God is you. He's in you. And the pleasure that you feel is when you've done something right and have attuned yourself more with bliss. Don't think of God as up there on a cloud smiling because you've done something right. He couldn't care less about what you do. But if you open yourself to His bliss, that makes it happy for Him because He can come into you. I've often wondered, why did God create the universe? My Guru said, Ananda is ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. And that ever new is something that people don't usually put in. It was Yogananda's translation. But the nature of bliss is to want to express itself. The nature of ever newness is to want to do things in ever new ways. And that is the nature of bliss that created the universe. So that bliss, we go through countless millions of incarnations, and finally we find that bliss. And surely that pleases God. But why did He start the whole thing in the first place? Doesn't seem quite fair, does it? And yet no saint who has ever found God has ever said, what a scam. They've always said it's the most wonderful show possible. All those incarnations, always trying to find a little bliss, losing it, finally getting it, and getting it forever. It's a glorious show. But God is not pleased in the normal sense. Yes, even my master said that. But I'm to explain it properly. God doesn't like my blue eyes or your green hair, whatever it might be. He loves you. And of course He's pleased if you turn to His love. Okay?
One more question I want to ask. There is a confusion. There are traditional temples and other places, tirthas and all this, where people go and say that they will receive this moksha and all that. Then there are communes like ISKCON, like yours, like others. What is the right path to go to the God?
He's saying in traditional religion there are temples and there are places, pilgrimages, places you can go, and they say if you go there you can achieve moksha. And on the other hand you have places like ISKCON, like Ananda, and we have our own teachings. So he's wondering what is the right way to get to God.
The right way is to look for God in yourself. The right pilgrimage is to go inside and find Him here. The right temple is this body. All the other things are symbols. And certainly you do not find moksha for going on pilgrimage. You may get a little good karma, you may. If you argue with your fellow pilgrims, you may not. Really, you must understand, this is Sanatana Dharma, and it's not Hinduism or Christianity or anything. It's the religion of the universe. The most distant planet in the most distant galaxy would have to have the same religion. Everything comes from God, everything must merge back into Him. And wherever you are, whatever little point of space you are, that is your place where you can find God. So don't think that pilgrimage, and don't worry about what religionists say. Religions are not the way to God. Spirituality is the way to God. That is to say, religions emphasize belief. People used to believe the world is flat. It isn't. That didn't make it so, did it? Our beliefs don't make truth. Truth is truth. We have to find out what it is and attune ourselves to that truth. Angela, c'è qualcuno che ti traduce per te? Ok, ok. Ero preoccupato. So do you understand? Does that make sense to you? Doesn't it make sense to you? No.
It does, Swami, he said.
It does. Okay. When Indians go like that, you know what they're saying. Any other questions?
Swansea, you talk about attunement in your book. Now you talk about learning a language like Greek, Spanish, and in your younger days. How do you attune in a better way? What some technique or something? What exactly you do for better attunement?
How do you, he said you talk about attunement in your book, how you learned Greek and languages by attuning to them. How do you better attune yourself?
You know, everything that you do, mind you, Yogananda said, thoughts are universally, not individually rooted. You think you have your own thoughts, but you don't. They come from the universe. I remember one time I fell into a bad mood. I was very young, and I tried to argue my way out of the mood. Well, reason always follows feeling. That's how women always have the upper hand in marriage, even though they don't seem to. The reason follows feeling, and women represent feeling. Well, every time I tried to reason myself out of this mood, feeling would come in and say, yeah, but, and that would throw me down again and again. Finally, I said, well, do we like this mood, boys? I talking to my subconscious tendencies. No! Well, what do we do about it? Let's sit and meditate. So I did, and I put my mind very strongly here. And in doing that, suddenly the mood vanished. I was on another plane of consciousness, and those moods couldn't exist. Where your level of consciousness is depends on that depends where your thoughts are. So you have to raise your level of consciousness. Now, what was Greek.
Attunement.
I have found that by attuning myself to this universal consciousness of any subject that I'm studying, it comes to me easily. In trying to learn Greek, I don't know if all of you have read my book, The New Path, but it was a very interesting experience in my youth in college. I never went to class, and when the exam was coming around, the professor would say, well, there's some people who might as well not even come to this exam, this final exam, and everybody looked at me and laughed. And I said, no, I'm going to pass that exam. And a week before, I picked up the book and on Greek, and I thought, I'll study twice as long tomorrow. And the next day, I was 3 times as long. Finally, the night before the exam, I thought, oh my God, the exam's tomorrow morning. And I said, all right, you're a Greek. With the thought that I was Greek, there was no problem. And I had no difficulty with that thought that I was Greek. To me, it's difficult. I don't want to. It was just my own language I was pulling it in. And really, I'm telling you the truth, there were only 2 people in that class who passed that exam. I was one of them. But what you do, when I went to Bali, I went up onto Mount Gunung Agung, as they call it, 7,000 feet high. It was cold, and I asked for a glass of water. I asked for a blanket. He brought me a glass of water. And somebody told me later that the word blanket sounds like water in Bali. Well, how could I know that? Anyway, I thought, I've just got to learn this language. I'm hopeless without it. So I picked up a book of Indonesian grammar, which fortunately is very easy. And in 2 weeks, I had a vocabulary of 600 words and was able to converse on philosophy and different subjects, and I had no trouble. But how? By just thinking I could do it. Really, if you want to be a mathematician, put yourself in tune with the thought of being a mathematician. If you want to speak French, then I remember I wanted to learn Spanish. when I went to Mexico in 1945. I was 19 years old. I had taken a course in Spanish, but I hadn't really done much work with it. But when I reached Laredo, which is the border town between Texas and Mexico, I said, all right, I've got to make myself Mexican. I thought myself into being Mexican. And I got the first thing you have to do is try to get the accent right. So I went into a restaurant on the way to Monterrey, and I wanted to ask for a glass of water. And I tried to get that accent just right, and I came in and asked for a glass of water, and this American looked at me and said, "Are you Mexican?" I felt very pleased. But the thing is, if you can get the accent right, it will help you a lot. Think of it as not difficult. Think of it as your own. If you want to be a good engineer, then the first thing is to persuade yourself you're an engineer. I have done this many times in my life. When I wanted to learn a subject, when I wanted to get into a particular... Well, the first thing on the spiritual path is, don't tell yourself I'm a sinner. Tell yourself I'm a saint. Remember what Yogananda said, a saint is a sinner who never gave up. There was a boy in our ashram in Los Angeles who had a vision. He had many visions. It was sort of scary, really. When you're somewhat advanced on the path and there's a danger of you falling, then you're given many experiences to try to hold you on. And Master had said to him, if you leave the path now, it will take you another 200 incarnations to come back to the point that you have reached right now. And he left the path. But he had many visions. And you must remember, this is a scary path in a way. The alternatives are drastic. You can go wandering in delusion and think it's just fine. But if you want God, it's hell. And he said to me once he had a vision of Master in a great light, and all the disciples were running toward that light, and only 4 of them got in, and I was one of them. He said that all of them they would run and they'd fall down. Sometimes they'd not get up. Sometimes it would take them a while to get up, and they'd start running very slowly, and finally they'd pick up speed again. I said, did I fall? He said, oh, everybody fell, but you got up and ran again. But the thing is to understand, if you can persuade yourself that you are a saint, not to feed your ego, but to get rid of the thought that you have any other attraction, it's very important. What you want to be, imagine yourself to be. If you want to be kind, then act kind even if you don't feel it, and you'll finally find that consciousness comes to you. And every good quality, imagine yourself having it, and it will come to you. Nothing is yours. It's all borrowed from the universe. These truths I'm telling you are very deep and very important, and I have proved them in my life again and again. If I had to do something, I would put myself in tune with it. And I remember one time in Mexico, because your mind is all powerful. I was that same year, I was 19 years old. I got streptococcus, tonsillitis, dysentery, and I was so sick to get to the bathroom I would have to lean against the wall and gradually work my way over until finally I could reach the bathroom. Finally I was well enough to go see a doctor, and the doctor said, oh my God, you've got to go to the hospital immediately. So he put me in the hospital. He said, you'll have to be here for at least 2 weeks. You resign yourself to that. And I asked discreetly how much it would cost to be in the hospital 2 weeks. It was much more than the money I had. So I thought, I'm just going to get well. And I said, I am well. And in 2 days I was out. You can do that. You can make yourself well. You make yourself ill. Why not make yourself well? Much of your illness is because you've made yourself ill. Why not make yourself well? Why not make yourself strong? When you're weak, you're thinking yourself weak. When everything you are, you have thought yourself into that position. Think yourself out of it if you don't like it, and go in that direction if you do like it. And you will find that you can become stronger and stronger in that way. I know it's true. Any other questions?
स्वामी जी, क्या 1 या 2 घंटे हर रोज मेडिटेशन करना ही चाहिए, या दिन भर आप मन में रख के उनके प्रति मन में मन बात करते हैं, हर समय उनका नाम लेते हैं, उनसे बातें करते हैं, तो ये इसेंशियल नहीं है क्या? क्या मेडिटेशन ही करना चाहिए?
She's asking, is it essential to meditate every day for an hour or two, or could you just keep God in your heart, constantly talking to Him or praying to Him?
Both are good, but I wouldn't say either or. If you're busy, if you have children running all over the place, it's not so easy to meditate. But you must try. God will give you some credit for trying. You know, some people go to bed till their children are asleep, they get up and then they meditate. There's a beautiful story of Mirabai, incidentally, that just came into my mind. You know Mirabai, the devotee of Krishna. She had a husband, and she worried because he was always, he never talked of God. And she kept praying for his conversion. Finally, one night, they were in bed together, and she heard him in his sleep saying, "Oh, my beloved, when will you come to me?" He kept talking like this with such devotion. When she woke up, when they woke up in the morning, she said, "Now I've found your secret. Now I know." He said, "Don't tell me, don't say it." He said, "Yes, I know what a devotee you are." He said, "I'm sorry you said that. I promised God that if anybody found my secret, I would leave this body." He sat down in lotus pose and left his body. But so many wonderful stories there are. Anyway, if you can give time at night, but it's not an either or thing. You should always keep God in your mind. If you can't, Ramakrishna said to one woman, then think of your baby as your Balakrishna. Okay, but still if you can meditate, and we teach meditation, that will help you a lot. Yes.
Ramakrishna, he achieved God in 56 ways. There were 56 ways by which he could reach to the God that is the same place. Now, question is, for each person, we are not of that level, conscious level. We are very simple persons, ordinary persons. What is the best way to achieve or realize God?
He said
For each person.
Ramakrishna had 56 ways to reach God, and what is the best way, especially for us people who are not at the same level of his? What's the best way
His
to reach
incarnation was to show that all ways go to God. That doesn't mean you have to go all ways. His incarnation was intended to show they all go that way. But when you find your way, then go that way. Many people try to say, well, this would help, that would help. No, I've just said, this is my way.
Now, how to know that? What is my way?
Okay, if you don't know, ask God for help and shop the counter. When you find one that really suits you, then say, this is mine. But when you've decided, then stay with that. The main thing to remember always is that you seek God in yourself. It isn't you who choose the guru. It's God who sends him to you. When you love God deeply enough, first of all, he sends you books, lectures, satsang. When you love him deeply enough, he finally sends you to a true guru. And when you've found him, then don't leave him. Fickleness is a very bad thing. You know, many people who came to Jesus, Jesus said, many are called, few are chosen. Many came to my guru, very few remained. There was one lecture where there were 5,000 people, and Dr. Lewis said, what a wonderful crowd. Yogananda said, we'll be lucky if we get 5 students out of it. And that's what they got exactly, 5 students. There are many people come, many people listen, few people stay. Try to be one of those who stays, because there's no future for you until you do. You know, well, I told you about Boone. Master said that it would take him 200 lifetimes to come back to the state he'd found already. You have no choice. It's not as if you could say, well, if I can take God, I can go another way. You've all been made by God. You are all His manifestations. You have no choice but to go back to Him. And the thing is, you will never find bliss until you go back to Him. Nor will you find permanent satisfaction until you go back to Him. So you may say, well, I'm playing with my toys right now. Okay, play with them. But sooner or later you'll have to come back. Why waste time? When you've heard a true message, why waste time? Okay? Yes.
When I go through periods of trial and suffering, one of the big hassles for me is self-pity. How do I make myself stronger?
She said when she goes through periods of trials and suffering, one of the main obstacles is self-pity. How can she make herself stronger?
Serve other people. That's very important. You know, I went through a period when I came to Master. I had lived in many places. I had lived all over, not all over the world, but all over Europe and America. And I decided I'm going to make myself attached to this place so there's no danger of leaving it. So that attachment was what was broken. I was completely happy there. I completely believed in everything that I was doing. And suddenly they threw me out. I had no choice in the matter. It seemed to me as if my life was destroyed. I had no other purpose than to serve my Guru, and they took that away from me. I thought, no, I have to serve my Guru. So I decided to teach classes, to find other ways of serving him. I was at Yosemite Park, one of the most beautiful places in the world in California. And I heard a couple of young men playing with guitars, singing, badly I should say. And I felt in the mood. I had a good voice, and I'd studied singing, and I wanted to sing, so I went over and said, would you like me to sing for you? So they said, yes, we'd love it, so I did. Well, they said, oh, you've got to come and sing for a party we're having this evening. So I went and sang, and they loved it too. And on the way back home from Yosemite the next day, I was thinking this would be one way to serve my Guru, but what can I sing? And then I thought, well, maybe I can write my own songs. And as soon as I thought that, something was given to me. So some way to serve will be given to you if you want to serve. So instead of sitting there in self-pity, and I had it, I have to admit, but I got out of it, of course. But it's hard not to. The best way I found is to give. Give of yourself. Don't think about yourself. Okay? Have I beaten you all into the ground? Yes.
Can we create a want or a willingness in other people? If yes, then how? For example, I want to roam around the world and I don't see myself going alone. I want to take my family, but they just don't want to. So can I create a want or willingness in them? How?
How can you create a willingness in others? He gives this example that he's interested in traveling the world, but he doesn't want to do it alone, and he wants to take his family with him, and they aren't interested. How can he want them to be willing to do something?
I've done it. I can say there wasn't anything in it. Every place you go, it's the same old earth, same old sky. Basically, it's no different. Wherever you are, there you are, stuck with yourself. So, okay, if the family doesn't want you to go, maybe they'll give you a vacation. You can go to Hawaii or something. But really, believe me, travel is not the answer. Emerson said, travel is a fool's paradise. You're trying to run away from yourself, and you'll never make it. I don't know what more to say. I mean, you can't take your whole family with you without spending lots of money. And if you don't have it, and if you do have it, any other questions? Yes.
Just a follow up on the question. How can you inspire people actually towards the spiritual path, make them more willing? What would be guidelines that you can give?
I have always tried to ask God what I should do. You know, when I used to give classes in yoga, I would sit in a broom closet or any room I could find that was not in the hall and try to feel the people as they came in and try to feel what they wanted to know. And then I would talk according to what they wanted. I never prepared a talk, but I tried to talk to people, with people, never at people. And the more you do that, the more you'll find that that works. Okay? Would you like to sing a song? Play a
We have
song?
one question more.
Yeah, what is it?
That lady.
Okay, the first
They're all
one.
creations of God, and the objective was that we find bliss and we go back to God. Then why do we get attracted to all the physical beauty?
Because we think we'll find bliss in them, and we don't. What's that?
Why don't we remember that we have to go back to God?
Yeah, why not? That's the power of Maya is very great. It can take a pure soul and make him a complete drunkard, willing to murder people, hating everybody. Why? He's a child of God. He ought to know better. But somehow the power of Maya is very great. And the more you go into it, the greater it'll become. There's no depth to which you cannot sink. You can end up not even as a human being, like a four-footed beast mooing in flowery meadows, or go even further down. You can even reach the level of a germ and have to climb all the way back. And it's not unheard of for people to do that. The diseases that enter this planet like epidemics are usually from tamasic galaxies. You know, there's no distance between galaxies. It's all just space is a delusion, time is a delusion. And they come here to be punished. The epidemics, they get destroyed by medicine and so on. But there is no limit to how far you can fall or how far you can rise. It's a matter of putting out the call. Call to God, even if you're in the depths of despair, in the depths of delusion. God, please help me. Please come to me. You will find that although it seems as if it's not answered, there will be no starry symbols on the skies and the clouds and so on. Nonetheless, you will feel inside yourself a certain impetus to do more. The more you call to God, the more He puts out His hands to call you back to Him. You lift one hand to God, He drops two to pick you up. This is the truth. And you know, the main thing about the spiritual path is you can try it. It's a great path for experimentation. Try the attitude and you'll see that it works. Okay? Yes.
In the path of going back to God, how you decide that you are going in the right path? What are the symptoms that you are going in the right path?
The symptom that you're going on the right path is that you feel more and more bliss inside. When you feel yourself more and more loving of other people, when you feel yourself happier and happier inside, you're doing the right thing. It may not be the highest way. Who knows? I'm sure that going to Babaji would be the highest way. But would he take you? That's a question. If you find a way that will lead toward him. You know, Babaji was Krishna in another incarnation. Yogananda was Arjuna in another incarnation. That's about as close as you can get. But I don't want to force it on you by that kind of dogmatism. I just want to say, try it and see if it doesn't work. If you love God, I remember a very interesting story Yogananda told. He said that Krishna said to Draupadi, why don't you meditate and practice yoga? And she said, Lord, well, I'd love to, but I can't take my mind away from you long enough to practice yoga. And Krishna only smiled. So remember, even yoga is secondary to just loving God. Okay? And yes.
Swamiji, this is an economic question. In the mini economic downturn in 2008, India did not get that badly affected. The reason being because Indians are conservative in their approach to money. I mean, in as much they've got a savings economy and things like that. But you have predicted that, or you have prophesied that ultimately there'll be a major economic crisis. Do you think Indians will also get that badly affected?
What is he saying?
He said it's an economic question, Swami. He says back in 2008 during the depression, India wasn't affected as much. But now the depression that you've talked about that's coming, do you think it'll hit India as well?
It's bound to. It'll destroy America. If the dollar is destroyed, it's bound to affect the whole world. Because the whole world is tied to the dollar. So India's bound to be. And there are other cheerful thoughts. Pakistan may invade India with the power of China behind her. Pune is the defense capital of India. Where do you think bombs will fall? I tell you, you might as well just sit back and enjoy the show. I just hope some of these things happen while I'm alive. Any other points? Yes.
At that point, if they invade and if you are here, do you have any plans to appear in the sky and tell the planes to stop over there?
He says, in case we do have an attack and planes try to drop bombs on us, do you have any plan to appear in the sky and stop them?
No? Listen, you know the world is fiercely overpopulated. If it's ever to find happiness, we're going to have to get rid of most people anyway. Either they all become brahmacharis or they all get killed. I don't think the first is a likelihood, and therefore the chances of a massive destruction of humanity is more than probable. Whenever there is a great calamity coming to mankind, there's a huge increase of population to make sure that some people survive. Don't worry about it. I mean, you leave this world, you're still alive. You're still in the other world, you never can die. You leave a few things behind you, you'll get other things. Don't worry about it. Your dearest friends will be with you forever because you can't get rid of those where you send energy to them. Your dearest enemies will be with you to just stop hating them. Really, this world is so different from the way our human eyes view it. It's altogether, everything is God. And so if God destroys everything, stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds. That's the way Yogananda put it. And really, I kind of look forward to these things because I think that I'd like to see a good show once in a while. Okay, anyway, I'm joking, but not wholly. Any other questions?
Robi, Swami.
Robi.
Sir, during those times, what will be our duty as Ananda, as a movement?
The best thing is to create villages like Ananda, where you grow your own food, where you help your own people, and Ananda should help other villages to create other communities. That's the greatest thing that can happen in this age. I really believe that I have done one of the greatest services to this planet that are possible in creating communities of cooperative people. When you see the movie that they put out about Ananda Village, Finding Happiness, it's a wonderful movie, and it shows all these people living in harmony and creativity together. It's great. But this is the sort of thing that is possible. When you live in the cities, you can't imagine it. But in a small community, it's possible, where you get people of like mind. That's the important thing. Get them, those of like mind, to live together. And I believe that once this community gets really set, it will have helped to create such communities all over India. Yogananda said this would be the pattern for the future. And I would like you to take it very seriously. Think of how you could live here. Think of how you could further this ideal, because it is the solution to the problems of mankind today. There is too much greed, too much competition. People even tell you to compete. If you cooperate, you have much more success. If you have a village of 1,000 people and each one is competitive, each one will have 999 enemies. If you cooperate together, each one will have 999 friends. And we have proved it to be true. I have created these communities more than 40 years ago, and they work. And we have about 1,000 people living in them around the world. This is the newest, but I hope it will become a great success someday. Any other questions? Yes.
If we are only going to Dwapar Yuga from Kal Yuga, is this transition going to make the life on this world so much better? It is not Sat Yuga, it is just Kal Yuga to Dwapar transition. Is the world going to get so much better in this also?
What's he saying?
He's saying in this transition from Kali Yuga to Dwapara, is the world going to get a whole lot better?
Not very much better. It'll get better, but because it knows that everything is...
And all these are really very good, and life will get really good if these things spread. So will this really happen in Dwapar?
It will. There will come a time, Yogananda said, after all the destruction and warfare, people will know peace for 300 years. But mind you, that's not the end of war. War will continue up into Treta Yuga. And so we're stuck with it for some time. Yes.
स्वामी जी, क्या गुरु एक ही होना चाहिए या जिनसे हम प्रभावित होते हैं ऐसे अलग अलग टाइप के तो अनेक गुरु हो सकते हैं क्या ऐसे?
Should we have only one guru, or anybody who inspires us we can have many people who inspire us?
It's good to be inspired by everybody, but you need one guru. You know, the reason for a guru is not the upadesh, the teaching that he gives you. It is that by attunement, your main delusion is ego. And you can't get rid of ego by ego. The ego cannot talk you out of being that. It can make you try to be humble, try to be unimportant, all those things. But really, the only cue, that's why Jesus said, why it said in the Bible, as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God. We need to develop that power, and we can receive that power only from someone else. I know there's a story that a great saint in Buchi Retipalayam near Nellore told me. I spent 4 days with him. And he said that Krishna himself coming to people in vision, that's not enough to ensure your freedom. You must have a guru. It's the law of God. And that guru is just one, it's not many. And his word must be above everyone else's. And more than that, you must try to attune yourself to him and to his consciousness. He will give his consciousness to you, and you will get rid of that ego and realize that in attuning yourself with him, you don't lose yourself. You find yourself on a higher plane. This is a very important teaching, and I'd love for everybody to understand it, because without it, you can't really find God. Okay?
How do we help the collectivity? There's a collectivity in the ashram, or in the ashram, about 2,000. But then the egos, so the individuals living together. And how do we help that egos to drop?
Can you help me?
He's saying in a community or in an ashram, there are many people living together and each have their individual egos. How do you help them, or how do you help the collective by helping individually their egos to...
You know, I think everything needs a leader. I have to say that. If it hadn't been for me, Ananda wouldn't exist. I have given an example that other people have found inspiring, and so they live that way. And so in Ananda communities, there is harmony. In other communities, they have not had that, and there is not harmony, because the ego is always there. So I think it's very important. I used to, when I was in charge of the Center Department in Self-Realization Fellowship, I used to try to find some system that would make it possible for a center to continue no matter who was in charge of it. After many years of trying, I found it just wouldn't work. It always depends upon the leader. If his spirit is right, other people understand and follow that way. If it isn't, it'll just fall apart. There was one center in Oakland, California. It was the best center of all because Kamala Silver was there. After she left, it lost all its inspiration. So I'd love to get around that, but if you can prove to me that it's possible, I'll be very happy, but I have not found it to be so. Okay? Okay. Well, let's have a song. I'm glad you're here. Asha, can you come to lunch? Yeah.
Hark, hark, the lark at heaven's gate sings, and Phoebus skins arise, his steeds to water at those springs, on chalice flowers that rise, and winking merry buds begin to ope their golden eyes with everything that pretty is. My lady sweet, arise, arise, arise.
Thank you.